So I want to talk about a couple things here. Since we have a constitutional crisis, is there anything in American history that we could point to that would say, what do we do in this circumstances? And there are four important contexts. So you got the Worcester v. Georgia case, 1832 Worcester v. Georgia. You also have 1861 Ex parte Merryman, 1935 FDR Gold Clause cases, in 1974 Nixon v. U.S. So out of all these cases, and the Grok did a really good job at breaking these cases down. But Ex parte Merryman, 1861, this is Abraham Lincoln breaking habeas corpus, but this is wartime measures. FDR and the Gold Clause cases, 1935. FDR has taken us off the gold standard, which the Constitution says that you pay everything in silver and gold. And then 1974, Nixon v. U.S., kind of the same, but kind of not the same. Fucking heater, man. God damn, this motherfucker. So fucking loud and obnoxious. Now I gotta go all the way up here and change the damn thing. I'm fucking rocking it. I'm fucking kicking ass. Fucking goddamn motherfucker. So fucking loud and obnoxious, I should just redo this whole thing. I'm not going to. Not going to. Ex parte Merryman, I'm going to speak over it. It's going to eventually shut off. It's so fucking obnoxious. Such fucking bullshit. When I think about who I could be if I have, staff, if I have graphics, if I had the technology. Some people get to come out here on a damn table and they have a fucking, live studio audience that chuckles at every fucking thing, fucking Bill Maher, right? And this America, too, so nobody's cheering for you, nobody's backing you. And if you do happen to, become popular, then motherfuckers will just come after you just to come after you. Could you imagine a world where we encourage everybody to be the best versions of themselves that we could be? Oh, hey, I got a viewer. I'm kind of waiting for this damn heater to die down because it's a lot of fucking distortion, Where'd you go? I had a viewer, and now the viewer is gone. Okay, so ex parte Merryman, this is Abraham Lincoln. So when it comes to the constitutional crisis that we're in right now, the Worcester v. Georgia 1832 case is almost dead on. It's almost dead on what we're looking at right now. Nixon v. U.S., there was a constitutional crisis there, but Nixon is going to resign. So ultimately, Nixon respects the Supreme Court. FDR on the Gold Clause cases, this is an interesting one too. So I'd like to, dive more into the FDR and Gold Clause cases. Ex parte Merryman, this is Roger Taney. That son of a bitch fucked up with the Dred Scott decision. So Roger Taney is the one that started the damn Civil War with the way he kept fucking things up. And now Roger Taney is going to say, hey, you're supposed to do habeas corpus. You didn't do the habeas corpus thing. Oh, okay, Roger Taney. Now, I'm on Lincoln's side 100% with that. Nixon ultimately did, what the Supreme Court, well, he resigned, so he didn't do what the Supreme Court said, but he respected the decision and turned the case from a public case to a private case. FDR and Gold Clause cases, 1935. Like I said, that's an interesting one because it does say that you get to pay all your debts in silver and gold. and then FDR took us off the gold standard. Nixon is going to take us, completely off the gold standard. FDR also collected all the damn gold. So what are we going to do? We are going to focus on Worcester v. Georgia. So I probably should just title this Worcester v. Georgia. So what is this case about? Worcester v. Georgia. Well, you got this guy named Worcester, right? And this guy named Worcester, well, he's on the Cherokee lands, okay? So this is the state of Georgia, and this is a guy named Samuel Worcester and Eliza Butler. So this case is 1832. Worcester v. Georgia, 1832. So this is just, 29 years before the Civil War. This is going to cause a nullification crisis, okay? So let's just try to talk about the Samuel Alston Worcester is going to get arrested for living on Cherokee land without a Georgia permit. So who controls the Cherokee lands? Well, the way I understand Native American law is that Native American lands are a nation inside a nation. They're their own nation, and they're inside this nation. And so they have their own sovereignty. They get to run themselves. They get to come up with their own orders. They get to have police themselves, govern themselves, have courts. They get to run their little reservation, their plot of ground, however they please. And so if there's a Native American that's on the reservation, then only the Native Americans can handle the Native American. Now, this matters because when it comes to the federal government versus the state government, well, they want to kick the Cherokee off the fucking land. They want to kick the Cherokee off the land and then do a Trail of Tears. Ultimately, Samuel Worcester was doing something smart because he was trying to push for a Supreme Court case. And he's actually going to decline a pardon. That's actually a fantastic, incredible story, this Samuel Worcester. But he goes to live on the Cherokee land. He has like 11 other people that's with him. And the reason why it's a problem is because the federal government says that you can't live on Cherokee lands. Hey, I got somebody watching. Hey, what's going on there, person watching? So I'm talking about the Worcester v. Georgia case. So the Worcester v. Georgia case. Where did you go? You're gone. Now you're gone. Hey, you're back. Is that a new one? So the Worcester v. Georgia case. You have Georgia that says you can't live on Cherokee lands unless you have a state license. But that infringes upon the sovereignty of the Cherokee people. The federal government says only the federal government gets to infringe upon the sovereignty of the Cherokee people. The state doesn't have it. You got supremacy clause, and the federal government has the treaty with the Cherokee. So Worcester v. Georgia is an important case for American jurisprudence, but it's going to be really bad for the Cherokee people. So Samuel Alston Worcester got arrested for living on the Cherokee land without a Georgia permit. And then ultimately, what did Worcester v. Georgia decide? They said that he was right. They said Samuel Worcester was right and that Georgia needed to release him right away. Georgia didn't do that. Georgia still kept fighting the damn case. And then later on, even when Worcester got the pardon, he declined the pardon. So what happens when you have a constitutional crisis? What happens when you have the three branches of government that's going to break with the executive is going to break with the three branches of government and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? Well, this is some scary territory because what's supposed to happen here? Samuel Worcester was supposed to be freed out of a state prison, but he wasn't freed. I think we're going to have to think about private armies. How did they shut down Shays' rebellion? They got a private army. How did they, when it came to state militias, who's going to free Samuel Worcester? Who's going to enforce the Supreme Court decision? You got the federal marshals, right? You got the U.S. Marshals. You got FBI, CIA, ATF. You got some of the Army too, right? Marines, Air Force, Navy, Army. He's the commander in chief, but there's got to be some sort of mechanism for the Supreme Court to enforce their ruling. But it also makes me think about the damn genocide in Gaza. And so, do we have to start ourselves a private army, a private citizen army, a private rainbow militia? A private rainbow militia and just organize ourselves a private citizen army to stop the fucking genocide? Because that shit's happening against, not in my name. I don't want that shit to happen. I'm sick of people just killing a bunch of brown people overseas. If you can't say mass murdering a bunch of kids is wrong, well, you don't really have any kind of morals at all. You don't have a red line whatsoever. So when it comes to state militias, it was the Georgia militia that had arrested Worcester. The state militia had arrested Samuel Worcester. The Trail of Tears had 60,000 people that were removed. 17,000 people are going to die. The Trail of Tears happened in 1834, 1837, and 1838. So 60,000 Native Americans were removed out west. So the Cherokee in Georgia, they were the biggest losers. They lost. Samuel Alston Worcester is going to eventually, keep living, and he's going to follow the Cherokee, but his wife is going to catch a fever and she's going to die. So I guess in some respects, at least he got this Supreme Court case. Samuel Worcester got the Worcester v. Georgia. Now, there's going to be a nullification crisis that's going to happen too. So South Carolina declared the tariffs of 1828 and 1832 unconstitutional. So in this ironic, not only is history rhyming, history is just flat out repeating itself. So the tariffs of 1824, South Carolina didn't like it because they thought that the industrial North was picking on the plantation, the farming South. There's a 38% tax on imported goods and 45% tax on certain imported raw materials. In the South, it called the tariff of 1828 the tariff of abominations. So this is Vice President John C. Calhoun was against the tariff of 1824, whereas Andrew Jackson said that the tariff of 1828 was correct. So Andrew Jackson was all about the tariffs of 1828, whereas the Vice President John C. Calhoun was against the tariff of 1828. He called it the tariff of abominations. Eventually there's going to be a tariff of 1832 and there's going to be some reductions, but Calhoun resigned. So the 1832 tariff didn't fix the 1828 tariff. John C. Calhoun was the vice president for Andrew Jackson, and John C. Calhoun is going to resign on July 14th, 1832. Andrew Jackson had threatened war with South Carolina. So how did the nullification crisis between South Carolina and Andrew Jackson resolve itself? Andrew Jackson had threatened war with South Carolina. They passed a force bill. And then ultimately, the way the history book says is that South Carolina gave in. Andrew Jackson said, well, I'm going to declare war against you, South Carolina. You're going to pay your fucking tariffs, you son of a bitch. I'm the fucking president, and if I want to put a tariff on you dumbasses, on your fucking hemp, then I'm going to put a tariff on your hemp. Andrew Jackson, he had said that disunion by armed forces, treason. And so there was an 1833 tariff compromise. What happened was South Carolina, first they nullified the tariffs, right? They had a convention. They nullified the tariffs. And then Andrew Jackson passed the force bill because he's going to send troops in. South Carolina had nullified the tariff, and then South Carolina is going to nullify the force bill. Isn't that awesome? So they said that the tariff of abominations was deleterious. Ultimately, this was bad for the Cherokee people. So it's just interesting how you think you're doing one thing, but then it leads to another thing. Because Worcester v. Georgia, what the Supreme Court had decided was the federal government has supremacy over not just the state government, but they get to determine the relationship with the Cherokee and the federal government. So the state be damned. No, the state, you got to stay over there. Georgia's sitting there saying you could live on Cherokee lands, but you first need a state license. Well, shit, they're just passing out Cherokee lands to their buddies, anybody that pays for a damn license. So the Worcester v. Georgia decision is remarkable for several reasons. After they passed the Worcester v. Georgia decision, Andrew Jackson, this could be apocryphal, where it's not exactly what he said, but he was against it. He was like, they're going to have a hard time enforcing that. Worcester v. Georgia, so what? They want Andrew Jackson to take the federal troops into Georgia to enforce, the Supreme Court order? Andrew Jackson says, well, no, he's not going to do that. He says, John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. Meaning, okay, Supreme Court made a fucking decision, now you enforce it. So if we think about right now, that would be John Roberts. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, is going to have to enforce his own ruling. And well, what's he going to do with that? Is he going to get the U.S. Marshals involved? Are they going to bring this guy, into court? Now they're starting to show some documents that's saying that there is some tenuous connection. Is he MS-13? Well, we don't know for sure, but he was hanging out with other MS-13 people. They're at Home Depot. Is that what MS-13 does? They hang out at Home Depot waiting to do some drywall? That doesn't sound like MS-13 gangsta kind of stuff anyways. He's also got 3 kids, and his wife is an American, and that would mean that his 3 kids are American as well. So that's what Donald is essentially saying. Donald is essentially saying the same thing that Andrew Jackson said with Worcester v. Georgia. John Roberts has made his decision. Now let's see him enforce it. So the reason why this is peculiar, because in Andrew Jackson's time, you had Worcester v. Georgia. The federal government is supreme over the state government, but Andrew Jackson isn't going to enforce Worcester v. Georgia. But then right after that, you got the nullification crisis. So he's not going to enforce Worcester v. Georgia, the Supreme Court case against Georgia, but then South Carolina says, well, shit, we don't even have to listen to you, Andrew Jackson. We don't have to care about your damn tariffs. So when the Supreme Court ruled against Andrew Jackson in a case he didn't give a damn for, well, he didn't do anything to enforce it. But then when South Carolina started talking about something Andrew Jackson did give a damn about, the tariffs of 1828 and the tariffs of 1832, well, that's going to lead to a nullification crisis. South Carolina is going to say, well, since the federal government can't enforce Worcester v. Georgia, well, then why should the federal government, why should us as a state, South Carolina, put up with these fucking tariffs? They're sitting there putting tariffs on our goods. They're putting tariffs on the hemp. It's these damn manufacturing industrial north that's sitting there putting all the tariffs on these agricultural goods. They are breaking the South. So the South Carolina says, no, we're not going to go along with this. So South Carolina did the opposite, right? Do you see how they're the exact opposite? Georgia says that they get to control Cherokee land. Supreme Court says, no, they don't. Andrew Jackson doesn't give a shit about it. Andrew Jackson is not going to send out the troops to make sure that the Cherokee people are protected. But when it comes to South Carolina not giving a damn about his tariffs, well, now Andrew Jackson's going to send the troops. Now he's going to send the troops into South Carolina to force them into submission. No, I'm not going to protect the Cherokee people. And I'm not going to protect you South Carolinians either. I passed the fucking tariffs. I signed the thing in the act. You don't want to pay your fucking tariffs? Well, I'm going to send the goddamn army in. I'm going to send the fucking Marines and the damn army and the Navy and the Air Force. And I guess there was an Air Force back in the 1830s. But you see how they're completely opposite, right? Worcester v. Georgia says that the federal government was supreme, but Andrew Jackson didn't give a shit. South Carolina says, well, fuck your damn government. We're not going to listen to your stupid ass rules. And so there's a nullification crisis, and the way that Andrew Jackson solved that was by passing the Force Act, threatened to go to war with South Carolina. You better pay them fucking tariffs. And that's how, the nullification crisis had ended. So it's the exact opposite. Basically, if the Supreme Court passes something that the president wants, then the president's going to, go ahead and do it. And so it didn't solve anything. It was bad for the Cherokee people. It was bad for Worcester. Andrew Jackson wasn't going to enforce Worcester v. Georgia, and it didn't get enforced. So he ignored the Supreme Court ruling, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. The Supreme Court didn't get any of the marshals. They didn't organize anybody. They didn't make sure that their order was enforced. And this, spells kind of disaster for America, because I thought that all of American society is built upon this democratic, republican, constitutional, democratic republic. But if you're going to get rid of the constitutional democratic republic, then everything that our society has been built upon, is it not that, was I wrong? Am I wrong to think that what's great about America is our democratic, republican, constitutional, our constitutional democratic republic? Was I wrong about that? Because if you get rid of the Bill of Rights, you get rid of the Constitution and the enumerated powers, 3 branches of government, you get rid of the rule of law. What the fuck do you have? You just got a fascist totalitarian system? And in some respects, it's always been fascist. So maybe we should thank the orange Cheeto face guy for being so blatantly evil. Everything he touches turns to shit. Because he's clearly an evil bastard. Everything he touches is turning to shit. He did the tariffs just like Andrew Jackson did. But then he backed off of the tariffs. That was supposed to be our liberation day. So let me go over these notes, make sure I've covered everything here. Yeah, so Andrew Jackson and the nullification crisis, this is a precursor to the Civil War. The Supreme Court said Worcester was right, Georgia was wrong. Georgia keeps Worcester in prison. Worcester is not released out of prison. And when it comes to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, it's not about his innocence or his guilt. It's about him not having due process. And it's not just him. You have one guy that had some sort of tattoo with a soccer. He was a soccer player. So tattoos, soccer players, and then there was a gay dude, Andres. There was a gay dude that was deported. Let's presume 50% of everybody that was deported, gangsters, criminals, need to be deported. Fantastic, good, great. But the other half are innocent. The whole idea of beyond a reasonable doubt is that we would rather 10 guilty people go free than to throw one innocent person in jail. They're doing the opposite of what America believes. The Blackstone's ratio, Ben Franklin said he would rather 100 guilty people go free before you put one innocent person in jail. So they don't give a shit about throwing innocent people in jail. They don't give a shit. If the guy's guilty, you put him in front of a damn judge, you show the damn evidence, and the judge says, deport him, and then he gets deported. So Worcester v. Georgia, 1832, states cannot impose regulations on native lands. Georgia's laws restricted Caucasians from living on Cherokee land without a state license. So Georgia was breaking Cherokee sovereignty. The Supreme Court says that the federal government is supreme over the state government when it comes to Native American lands. Native American lands are a nation within a nation. And Andrew Jackson said, John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. And that's going to lead to the Trail of Tears. It's going to lead to the Trail of Tears. So we have a constitutional crisis right now. Worcester was not released out of prison. He stayed in a Georgia prison. Nome v. Garcia, 2025. is John Roberts. I mean, this is really stupid of Donald Trump. If Donald Trump wants to be, the leader of all of America, he would finesse, the three branches of government. He would put his executive action in the context of the legislative branch and the judicial branch. Because you can be a dictator in America as long as you get the 50 governors to back in, you get the Congress to back in, you get the Supreme Court. You also can't destroy individual freedoms. But he's not trying to finesse his dictatorship. He's trying to force his dictatorship down everybody's throat. And that's the thing with the bully, right? They'll just kind of put a thumb on each and every person to see put a tariff on everybody and see which one of these stupid ass countries will want to negotiate with me. Well, see, that country was weak. And then other countries like China's like, fuck your tariffs. We'll put, a bunch of tariffs on you, you asshole. Now what are you going to do? And then you're like, oh shit. And then a bunch of Japanese people are going to sell off their American bonds. Oh, now we're taking the damn fucking market. Technically speaking, I think the tariffs could have worked because it was going to change everything about the economy. And so it was going to be Americans creating stuff for Americans. So we were going to be the makers, the consumers, and the producers, and the customers, the workers. We were going to be, we were just going to be an insulated economy. And that would be a way to bring back farming. That would be a way to bring back factories. Because they're saying that our economy right now is the service industry, and the digital industry. Which, does America know about this? Because you got ranchers and you got, people still in factories today. But it does suck because if any of these other countries that we're dependent upon for agricultural or factory needs ever goes under or wants to put the screws to us, then we won't have our food products. We won't have our, the things that we need. So that would suck if there was a war. If there was a war and we needed to produce our own food and have our own factories producing things, the tariffs could have worked. But he's backed off the tariffs, and so I guess we're back to being a free market economy, except for China. But I've walked around, my house, and I can't find anything that's made in America. But I bet you China, they don't walk around their houses thinking, oh man, all of our stuff comes from America. No, they're communist over there, so they care about the people, and they care about whether or not their own people do well. So if I covered all the bases, I think I've covered all the bases. Worcester v. Georgia. 1832, Worcester v. Georgia. What the Abrego Garcia case has clearly shown me is that while we were speculating, is he a fascist? Is he not a fascist? Is this just rhetoric that the Democrats are using? This is Donald straight up saying he's a fucking fascist. When it comes to the Supreme Court, 6 of the 9 justices are conservative. He picked 3 of the fucking justices. And he's saying, to hell with your decision. He's not trying to finesse his fucking fascism. He's not even trying to finesse his dictatorship. So he's giving a middle finger to his own Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, 6 of 9, are conservatives. And so now we're in a constitutional crisis. So since we're not living on constitutional law anymore, then I guess it's just a bunch of tribalistic assholes. Everybody's just going to be in their own little cliques and their own little tribes. And I guess some people will be tied to state government. Some people might be tied to their own militias. If you're not part of an army or a police force, then I think you're going to be tied, to eventually gangs. I think this is going to increase gang activity because we have a criminal at the helm. And the criminal at the helm isn't giving a shit about what the court system has to say. And since the criminal at the helm don't care about the damn court system, well, who the fuck should care about the court system? Aren't you a dumbass fucking idiot if you listen to the court system? I mean, like fucking Phil Greene, right? Phil Greene had a subpoena to come in to testify, and he said, fuck you to Gonzalez and Ann Kelly. And he didn't get in trouble for it. Christopher Mondragon. Mondragon had, murdered Kenny John. Is the court doing anything about that shit? Well, it's 30 minutes, so I guess I'll stop.